Anybody who has ever chased turkeys for any length of time, assuming he is a realist and does not have a terminal case of egomania, eventually comes to the conclusion that there is a degree of luck inherent in the business. He is forced to this conclusion regardless of the level of expertise he may have achieved and irrespective of whatever level of pride he happens to take in that skill. Something besides skill sends you down the right road. Something other than skill makes you stop and listen at the head of the proper holler. The turkey you hear gobble there happens to be in a place that lets you get within 200 yards of his location without having to wade through chest-deep water. No herd of deer runs between you and the turkey after he has flown down and started in your direction, and the luck of the draw puts no impenetrable briar patches between the two of you to turn him aside. Pretty much all of this can be thrown into either one of two classifications, that of neutral luck or an absence of bad luck, and either is clearly within the scope of the normal probability tables. Every once in a while, at irregular intervals, something falls out of the normal range of percentages. The streak of luck is neither neutral nor indifferent, and someone gets something he really did not deserve. Whoever happens to be duty officer of the world that day decides he should have the Soldier of the Month award, arranges for his selection, and presents him with the unearned trophy. I have had a few of these awards personally, mostly at wide scouted times over a long and checkered career, and I have found that invariably having heard the tune, I have had to pay the piper. But this year was different. This year, not only were the tables of probability skewed, they were shattered, because early this past season, I did not have one of these incandescent visitations of angelic generosity. I had two, and they happened to come on two successive days as well. The payback plus interest is going to be severe because these things have to balance out. Pain and pleasure have to balance eventually, each on its own proper side of the fulcrum. But regardless of the level of payment, at least this time, the pleasure was worth the price. I was invited to hunt near Jacksonville, just south of the St. Mary's River, which in that area is a state line between Georgia and Florida. Northern border of the state of Florida has as its beginning a point where the 31st parallel crosses the Perdita River in Baldwin County, Alabama. The border runs east along latitude 31 for 150 miles to a point on the bank of the Chattahoochee River, and then turns south along this river until it comes to a town with the same name as the river on the shores of Lake Seminole. The line then resumes its easterly direction from this point, now becoming the boundary between Florida and Georgia, but now located somewhat south of latitude 31 and no longer going due east but running south 85 degrees east. It maintains such a direction for almost 180 miles until it comes to the bank of the St. Mary's River. At this point, one of those strange anomalies common to geographical boundaries all over the U.S. comes into play. At this juncture, the boundary between the two states becomes the St. Mary's River, which, when you look at the map, appears to put 400,000 acres of land into the wrong state. The St. Mary's River begins in the southeast corner of the Okefenokee Swamp, and both Georgia and Florida carefully stay on their own side of the river until it runs into the Atlantic Ocean just north of Fernandina Beach. Accepting such a boundary causes a tongue of land comprising some 120,000 acres that ought to belong to Georgia to jut down into Florida, and conversely, just east of this tongue, 287,000 acres of Florida is pushed north across the line and becomes part of Georgia. This does several things in addition to making the map look funny. It makes you wonder who did it, whatever did he have in mind by doing it, and why did he abandon a perfectly simple, plain, straight line that had served as a boundary for the past 200 miles? The answer, of course, is that it was done for the very best of reasons, the desire of the residents of the state of Georgia for peace, harmony, and self-preservation. Georgia was one of the 13 original colonies and was a British possession for most of the 18th century. Florida was traded back and forth between Spain and England for nearly 200 years and did not come under U.S. control until 1821. During the latter part of the 18th century and the early part of the 19th, it was the only area in the southeastern part of North America that was not part of the United States. Runaway slaves, escaped prisoners, thieving Indians, hold-up men fleeing from vigilantes, people who might properly have been called the sweepings of the frontier, skipped across the line into Florida to escape the clutches of the law. The residents of Georgia quite logically felt uncomfortable with nothing between themselves and these undesirables to the south but an ephemeral, imaginary survey line upon a map. They would have preferred 50 miles or so of salt water if it had been available. Since it was not, the best second choice was the St. Mary's River. The price they had to pay, the difference in area given versus the area taken up, was considered well worth the cost, as land rich as the country was at the time. The matter of giving up something as trifling as 167,000 acres of land in order to keep a river between you, your cows, and your women folk, and that collection of badasses on the south bank was nothing less than a bargain.